Solve the inequality. Give your answer in interval notation. X minus 2 over x squared minus 3x minus 10 is greater than or equal to 0. So what we're going to do is factor this fraction so that we can find where the zeros are. In the top, we know that our 0 is 2, because if we plug 2 in for x, we get 0. So one of our zeros is going to be 2. And in the denominator, we have x minus 5 times x plus 2 should give us, that's how we factor that out. So the zeros for the denominator are going to be 5 and negative 2. And we have to keep in mind that 5 and negative 2, we're not going to actually be able to include those. We're going to have open brackets at those two spots, because if the denominator were to equal 0, then we would have an undefined function. So when we make our box, we want to have, we'll go from negative infinity to negative 2, but we can't include it. And then we can go from negative 2 to 2, but we can include positive 2 because we can have a 0 on the top of a fraction. That's okay. And then we'll go from 2 to 5, but we cannot include 5, so we'll have an open bracket. Then we can go from 5 to positive infinity. So then we'll have x minus 2, x minus 5, x plus 2, and the result. We'll draw out our little box here. Alright, so if we plug in a number less than negative 2 into this first equation, we're going to get a negative. Same thing for here, we'll get a negative. But if we plug in any numbers greater than positive 2, we're going to have positives. For x minus 5, if we plug in a negative, we get a negative. Plug in a number between negative 2 and 2, we're going to get a negative. A number that's still less than 5, we'll still get a negative, but greater than 5, we'll have positive. For x plus 2, if we plug in a number less than negative 2, we get a negative. But if we plug in numbers bigger than negative 2, we're going to have positives all the way across. So now when we have a negative times negative is positive times negative is negative. Negative times negative is positive times positive is positive. Positive times negative is negative. Negative times positive is negative. And all positives gives us positives. So now we have to remember what we were looking for. We were looking for values where that fraction is greater than or equal to 0. So that's going to be here and here. So our answer in interval notation is going to be from negative 2 to positive 2 and from 5 to infinity.